In the lead up to its national elective conference, just a little over a month away, the African National Congress will today conclude its final National Executive Committee meeting today. The party is dealing with several hanging issues as part of its preparations for the conference, where the new top six will be elected. Let's take a deeper look into these matters with the help of political analyst Rebone Tau, who joins us in studio this morning. Professor of Political Sciences at the University of South Africa, that's Professor Dirk Kotze, and author as well as analyst Dr Oscar van Heerden. A very good morning to all our guests, and thank you very much for joining us. Professor Kotze, perhaps let me start with you and ask you what I asked Dr Ntsikelelo breakfast this morning in terms of a number of reports are surfacing, right? So you've also got a report of the leaked Integrity Commission report. You've got reports of people within the ANC who are giving out information about their goings-ins in the party, and in that meeting before the president of the party actually says anything to the public. While that is unusual, what do we read into it? What's at play there, do you perceive?
Well, I think the ANC is very much in a controversial position at this stage. They are at the same time preparing now for the national conference, and this meeting specifically is about going through all the reports, the organizational and the political and the financial reports. So it is very much coming to the end of the process of preparing for the national conference. Given President Ramaphosa's controversy about President Ramaphosa, the Phala situation. At the same time, the fact that the nomination process has also come to a conclusion means that the political temperature is extremely high at this stage. And there's maneuvering taking place by everyone almost in order to see how they can position their candidates as best as possible. And I think for the position of president, which is the first prize for most people, that is very much what we are seeing now. So it is about President Ramaphosa and the fact that he reportedly spoke at the NEC meeting and gave his version or his explanation of what Phala is to the NEC. But that opened up opportunities for those who are critical of him and supportive of Dr. Cyril. So I think all of these are being used, sometimes very on an opportunistic sense, in order to see which side or which person or which candidate can benefit from it.
Rebone, Professor speaks of the political temperature being quite high. According to a report in the City Press this morning, there were calls for President Cyril Ramaphosa to step aside, and it is alleged that that call was spearheaded by the 2017 and current presidential candidate, that is Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, Tony Yengeni, and Tladi Mahambe-Lahla. There we go. What should that tell us?
I think we need to really ask ourselves if the ANC is in a renewal process and leave the factional, battles within the ANC. Because the renewal of the ANC states that, in my understanding, things should be done differently. The president should be held accountable. The president, because he's a deployee of the ANC. We come from an era where President Zuma, when he was the president of the ANC, they will just let everything slide, those who were close to him, because he had also the power of recalling ministers or deputy ministers. So sometimes people fear losing this so-called blue lights because of their own selfish interest and not looking at the organization and what impact does this have on the image of the organization, because it was expected that obviously the CR22 or CR17 faction will close rank because they are also benefiting having President Ramaphosa at the helm at this present moment. So if President Ramaphosa would actually lose in December or be removed, they stand to lose also from a factional point of view because they know that they will not be considered for some of these posts or whether business deals and so forth. So it's about the image of the ANC. President Ramaphosa, as he said, he's spearing this renewal. he should give confidence to members of the ANC that he's serious about renewal. He's a transparent man. He's a man that accounts. I mean, if he could have just stepped aside, taken a leave of absence as the President of the Republic while he clears himself. We've seen that Dr. Mkhize did the same when he was, when the issues of digital vibes came in, and eventually later he resigned as the Minister of Health, because for him also it was to protect the image of the organization, you know, as being a deployee of this organization. So I think the issues about the renewal, is President Ramaphosa able to advance that renewal process within the ANC?
Dr. van Heerden, listening to what Rebone Tau is saying, in order to lead this renewal, should the President have offered to step aside?
Well, I think that firstly, the President certainly has an explanation to give to the nation. He needs to take the country into confidence and explain what exactly happened at the Phala farm. But I do think I slightly disagree with the step aside, in the sense that in as much as we must hold the President accountable, what we are dealing with at this point in time is nothing but an allegation. Someone came forward, made certain allegations. The President, the matter is sub judice. As you know, so many people investigating, the NPA, the Hawks, the Public Protector, and so on and so forth. And I think everyone is a little bit edgy, in the sense that they want immediate solution. They want an immediate answer to what has actually gone wrong. And I think it is putting the President in a very difficult position. Because, as I say, there are so many people that are trying to get to the bottom of it. And he is being very careful about what he says and how he says it in public. And as been outlined, he's now taken the NEC into confidence. The fact that there is still calls for his head clearly indicates that that explanation was not satisfactory to some within the NEC. And I fear that will always be the case. Even if the President explains himself, I fear that the tension that is being spoken about is so high politically in the ANC that there are those forces in the ANC that simply wants to see his back.
Then, Dr. van Heerden, you speak of it just being allegations at this stage, at least, but are these allegations not serious enough to warrant a serious response from the President beyond taking his own party into his confidence?
Remember, Dudu, that the President, at the very beginning, the President did make and release a statement with regards to the Phala thing, where he indicated a few issues. He indicated that indeed he acknowledged that there was a break-in. Secondly, that a certain amount of money was taken from his farm. And thirdly, that the money was proceeds, supposedly, from some auction. And then lastly, he indicated that he reported the matter to the SAPS unit that is responsible for the protection of the President. Thereby, in his mind, he had actually told the SAPS of the crime that had been committed. So the President did release that statement. And he feels, at this point, I suppose, that was satisfactory, because anything more than that, he might actually implicate himself further. And I think that is why I'm saying that at this stage, it's allegations. He responded to that, but unfortunately, that response is not acceptable to many.
Professor Kotze, your thought on that?
Yeah, I more or less agree with this. I think the problem at this stage is that there are so many investigations taking place. It's the Public Protector's investigation. There's the investigation that the Integrity Commission did. There's also now the process in Parliament that is unfolding. So in the end, I think what is the risk is that there's going to be differences of opinion in terms of conclusions. And that will actually be even more problematic than where we are at the moment. It is certainly so that there's, at this stage, still no proof that President Ramaphosa has committed any crime or that he is liable for any criminal investigation. So far, it's more about, I would say, his integrity, the status of him as a person, as a political leader, and the fact that he hasn't come out in terms of a public statement. I think that my interpretation is that he is very cautious to talk in public because of what happened, for example, when in Parliament he answered the question to John Steenhuisen, which was incorrect in terms of the content of it, and it led to a public protector's investigation ultimately. So there's, I guess, quite a number of causes that, but I think ultimately in the end, the big issue is this situation threatening the national conference of the ANC? Because if he's forced to step aside, then all the nominations, and as I understand it, it's about 70% of all the branches actually nominated him as president. Now, what does that then say about the ANC and its membership versus Dr. Cyril, who's also implicated by the Special Investigative Unit, not charged in court. So they are, in a sense, in a similar situation. So if the one must withdraw from the election process, then the other one, strictly speaking, would have to do the same. And then you turn the conference on its head. So I think this is one of the really complicated implications in terms of timing. If it was at a time when there was no national conference in the pipeline, it would have been very different.
Rebone Tau, let's come back to you. So the city press is also speaking of the core, which is standing firm, which are people who are allegedly backing Ramaphosa. Those would include Ministers Mondli Gungubele, Mamuluku Kubai, and Naledi Pandor, who countered the argument that the president should resign, apparently. And so when we take a look at the battle for the top six, because it's not just about the president, should Ramaphosa re-emerge as president of the ANC, whom should he take into his confidence, especially given those who have publicly denounced him, for lack of a better word, and those who have backed him? And where does Paul Mashatile fit in all of this as well?
I still say if the president is serious about the renewal, also how will approach matters post the conference will also, because in politics, people don't have to agree with you, but if people have got the capacity to lead, they should be given an opportunity. I mean, the ANC, it's a broad church, for example, from even an ideological point of view. So where things are, President Ramaphosa, if he's going to be factional after the conference, that is going to put the ANC in a very difficult position going to 2024. We have seen even how the ANC declined in 2021. The impact of having the likes of Esma Khashule suspended, even the likes of people like Batabile Dlamini being put in the periphery. They command some numbers on the ground. And that has an impact on the ANC, because look at 2019, Esma Khashule was still there. The ANC and the Women's League was still there. People like Batabile, carried the ANC as the leader of the Women's League in those 2019 elections. In 2021, we do not see them anywhere, and that's where we start to see this decline that we have never seen of the ANC since the dawn of our democracy. So it is in the best interest of the ANC, of the president, that post the conference, he should not be judging who did not support him. He should look at the interest of the ANC and the renewal process of the ANC.
To your point, I think it was Nomvula Mokonyane who pointed out that the ANC NEC is at its weakest. They don't even have leagues. We're back with more on this conversation with our guests. Do stay with us as we take a quick breather. Hello again. We're taking a look at all things ANC, especially in the lead up to the elective conference in December. We're joined by political analyst Rebone Tau, who joins us in the studio, Professor of Political Sciences at the University of South Africa. That's Professor Dirk Kotze, and author as well as analyst Dr Oscar van Heerden, who joins us via Zoom. Professor Kotze, perhaps let me come to you. So we've spoken extensively about the role players in the party itself. If you take a look at some of the problems that are plaguing South Africa, yes, this time around they are more concerned about choosing a leader that will best serve the party. When it comes to 2024, South Africans will be concerned about choosing a party that will best serve its interests. So if we take out the scorecard and we take a look at whether people's quality of lives have improved, we are now talking about the just energy transition, which some sectors of society are pushing back on, questioning why it is we're moving away from coal but still exporting that coal. We've got a number of social ills also on the ground that we can talk about. Does it appear to you, at least, that the party is concerned about South Africa, or the party is concerned about the party?
Well, I think what you are referring to will we see in terms of what will be their decisions with respect to its policies. Its national policies with respect to the economy, with respect to the health, education, and all international relations and all sorts of matters. And to what extent there is a realignment or a recalibration of policies, because to a large extent the ANC's policies for the last 10 years or more have been more or less the same and have been constant and have not been adapted to the changing circumstances. So if the ANC continues with this notion of continuity in terms of its policies, then they are seriously in trouble from a public perspective. At the same time, I think it's not purely just about policies, it is how they are going to present themselves as a party in cooperation in government in the next year and a half until the 24 elections. At this stage, they are not doing well at all. And the fact that we've seen in the last year's local government election and the 2019 provincial and national elections that they have experienced serious declines in their support base means that something miraculous must now happen in order to turn that around. At this stage, we don't see it. We are rather seeing indecisiveness when it comes, for example, to local government and the different metros, whether it is Ekurhuleni, which is the latest case in the case of Johannesburg, and even in the case of Tshwane and Nelson Mandela Bay, and then others also. So that the ANC will, in order to be able to turn around the public opinion and the public image that they have, will have to do work that is almost impossible to do in the next 18 months. So in that sense, whatever is happening at this conference might not have necessarily a serious impact on the ANC's trajectory, because they are trying very hard to present or to organize this conference as if it's not going to be dominated by the elections. But in the end, the last at least two national conferences were effectively dominated by the elections in the first instance, and the policy dimension didn't receive sufficient attention. And I guess that we are in it at this stage again in a similar type of situation. So the ANC will have to prove to the public in general that they have now a different approach, that they look at the national situation in a more serious light, and that they will spend most of their time at this conference discussing that and making adjustments and changes to their policies in order to meet these demands that exist.
Dr. van Heerden, Professor Kotze speaks of something miraculous needing to happen, or there must be something miraculous that must happen for the ANC to actually turn the tide. What should we read into that? Should South Africans leave it up to divine intervention? Is there nothing that the everyday person can do?
Yeah, I think I agree with the sentiment that says that this conference is completely going to be informed by 2024. I think everyone in the ANC is aware that whatever the outcome of the national conference, the public, the people, the voters in 2024 is going to express their agreement or disagreement with the outcome of the ANC conference, because that is the only opportunity for us as voters to say, because there's 5,000 members of the ANC that goes to conference. They make decisions. We are not part of that. And so where we will express our agreement or disagreement is in the general election come 2024. And I think the ANC, everyone in the ANC is aware of that. Those forces or factions in the ANC that says that the president must step aside, the president should not be our number one candidate as we go to the 2024 elections, I think the uppermost in their minds is also, who do we then put as an alternative? Will that person be acceptable to the public? And what kind of policy changes? I agree with Professor Kotze. What kind of policy changes will we introduce to actually make sure that they get the vote? Because as we all know, the ANC is in decline. In the last local government elections, they ceded a lot of support. People voted with their feet. They did not come to the polls. And so I think it is true to do. People are going to be looking at this conference, wanting certain results, wanting to see what's in it for me. And there needs to be some serious conversations at the conference about how do we tackle the scourge of unemployment, poverty, and inequality, because that is what people are interested in.
Absolutely. Rebone Tau is in studio with us. Before we went to the break, you mentioned that President Cyril Ramaphosa cannot afford to be factional should he make it, right, post-December. Maybe a two-pronged question. Why shouldn't he be, maybe not petty, but why shouldn't he surround himself with people that he feels that he can trust, one? And maybe two, to give South Africans that confidence that we have been talking about throughout the morning, or that has been highlighted, should he resign as the president of the country? Does that mean he should resign as the president of the ANC?
I think factionalism has put the ANC where it is today. You can go back to even 2005, building up to Polokwane. We even saw the Youth League at the time, led by Fikile Mbalula, how it was a lobby group for Jacob Zuma, So you can't have a situation where factionalism continues to be the way it is, so deep-rooted in the ANC, if you are going to say you are talking about renewal. Renewal is not about people's emotions, but renewal is about what is best for the organization. People don't have to be your friends for you to give them the responsibility. If someone has got the capacity and they differ with you politically, there is nothing wrong. We're in this crisis that we are as a nation because leaders of the ANC are groupies to the president. They don't hold any president accountable. We come from the Nkandla era where nothing was wrong that happened around Nkandla, even in parliament. There had to be a court judgment, a constitutional court, around the Nkandla matter, condemning what the speaker did. So we can't have that situation as South Africans where now we are subjected to factionalism that is playing itself in the ANC that has then an impact on what happens in the country. Secondly, when you speak, even just to speak a bit about the leagues themselves, we don't know what the leagues stand for in terms of their policy positions going to this conference in December. This is something that is not common in the ANC. This shows that there is a crisis in the ANC. I can tell you, you can go back to 2012. When the Youth League went to Mangaung, they were clear, on issues of nationalization and so forth, what we call at the time economic freedom in our lifetime. Today we don't know what the Youth League stands for. We don't know what the Women's League stands for. And unfortunately, there won't be even any PGCs to consolidate on policy positions going to this conference in December. So people will just go there. The preoccupation is more about voting. But unfortunately, President Ramaphosa will have to do what is in the best interest of the ANC. And veterans building up to 2017 spoke about a consultative conference. And up to now, the ANC has not had a consultative conference, because the reason for a consultative conference is to deal with some of these challenges that face the party, the factionalism that face the party, having an NEC that are groupies to a sitting president and not able to make a president to account, a consultative conference will do a reflection. We know of Morogoro, we know of Kwabe. There was also one in 1990, just before the 1991 Durban conference. There's never been a consultative conference since then. The ANC is always, at times, having this consultative conference to actually reflect and take stock and see where is it that it has gone wrong and where is it that it needs to fix things. Because the things you can't have us and them as a president. You are a leader of the party, not a leader of us and them. So it is in his best interest to serve as the leader of the ANC, not a leader of a faction within the ANC.
You mentioned the leagues and you highlighted just a tad their importance. When you take a look at it, why do you believe they have been rendered so toothless?
There's a deliberate effort, and it started with the Youth League. It's 10 years next year since they disbanded. NEC was disbanded in 2013. Nothing has changed. Things have actually even gotten worse. The Youth League, its character that we're seeing today is not the character that we know 10 years back. And because the Youth League was powerful at the time, going to 2012, in terms of its policy positions, in terms of its views that they don't even want President at the time, Jacob Zuma. The Women's League, who did it carry in 2017? It carried Dr. Dlamini Zuma, And that was a campaign that was run by the Women's League. If it wasn't for the Women's League, that campaign would have not been that strong. So obviously, you eliminate your opponents through also the leagues. And unfortunately, this is the first time that the ANC is going to its elective conference, even task teams of leagues. The same leagues that we are seeing with these pronouncements, all of them do not have RGCs to consult their constituencies in terms of who should be their preferred candidates. They just sat amongst themselves. So you can see it was just a group of friends sitting there and saying, we want so and so. I was speaking to one of the Women's League task team members after their pronouncement, trying to understand what is the logic of having only women to deputize. Is that, have they lost faith in women? And this person says to me, unfortunately, the Women's League has become so inward looking.
Okay, in closing up the conversation, perhaps let's just get a final thought from each of our guests. Dr. van Heerden, we know that the president of the ANC will be closing the meeting later today. One thing you would like to hear coming out from him?
Yeah, I would like to, as is being said, I would like him to come quite firmly in terms of what is going to happen over the next 18 months, what changes, policy changes there's going to be in terms of entering the 2024 elections, and not just promises, but practical. What is it that we are going to do? I just want to caution in terms of the point about factionalism, which is that, one could see it as factionalism, but I think the president is quite aware if he gets re-elected in this conference. I think that a lot of the electorate is wanting to see him being a bit more firm in cleaning up. Now, some might interpret that as factionalism, but I think that would actually stand the ANC in good stead as they go to 2024, to actually rid itself of certain rotten apples, because that is what the public in general also wants to see. Not necessarily that it's factionalism, but he is going to have to clean and show the South Africans that there is a real, because I think that he's been a bit soft on those issues. And I think that if he gets real...
I beg your pardon, why then should South Africans throw their weight behind him if he has so far proven to dilly-dally on issues and not be firm on them? Why should South Africans give him another chance?
I think that what the president has done is to allow legal processes to take its course, for people to be charged, to go into court. There is a presumption of innocence and so forth. But all of this has meant that it brought the ANC into disrepute more and more. And I think that if he gets re-elected in December, with the run-up to the general election, he's going to have to come out much more firmly politically in terms of what is it that you are doing as a leader in the ANC to actually now deal with some of these elements that's in the leadership of the governing party.
Fair enough. Professor Kotze, what you are looking forward to the most?
Well, as the governing party of the country, I think it is more than just in the ANC's interest that they start to consolidate. At this moment, the ANC looks too disorganized, too fragmented to be also in the interest of being an effective government, and at the same time dealing with the national interest in general. So on the one hand, yes, it is about party politics and about the party's interest, but on the other hand, it is because of its position as government. It reaches much wider and it impacts much wider in terms of the interest of the country as a whole. And I think we are at this stage in a position for the country as a whole where there's a lot of strong leadership and strong direction in terms of governance that is required. And I think this is something that everyone is looking for, is more of that, instead of putting the party and the internal politics of the party now as the first priority.
Rebone Tau?
Before I answer your question, the issue of factionalism is very fun and interesting. Thabo Makwetla mentioned in Busasa, he's in the CR faction. Kwere Mantashe, Khumbuzo Chaveri, Zizi Kodwa. Now it has to start with his own faction if he's going to talk about good governance, the president, because you can't be paging others, but those who are close to you are not being charged. Removed, in those positions. But I think where the ANC is, especially what one expects from today, the issue of ESCOM, it's a serious crisis. We can't continue to learn as a job. You want to build the economy. How do you build the economy under this current situation that we find ourselves, that we forever are not having electricity? It can't be normal. The ANC needs to be decisive. So that, because what the president will be speaking also today is the decisions of the NEC, of the ANC. So it can't be about our own internal factions, but also about the society. So for me, ESCOM, they need to be really decisive and give us a clear direction of where we are going as a country.
We are being made to understand that the solution to that, right, is the just energy transition. Is that enough?
You see, where we are, it's a process. Now we just are saying as South Africans, we want change like now, because these things are affecting us now. Don't tell us about something that in 2025, that's when you'll have solved our problems.
Fair point. Thank you very much to our guest, political analyst Rebone Tau, Professor of Political Sciences at the University of South Africa, Professor Dirk Kotze, and author as well as analyst Dr. Oscar van Heerden.